Kyle Brad from Chaparral Motorsports here with Michael Lindsay, and today we're talking about the 2020 Suzuki RM-Z 450. Now behind us are the rest of the 450s that Michael has had in his 450 Shootout for this year. If you want to see any of that information, go over to Michael's channel or take a look at the playlist on the Chaparral Motorsports YouTube channel, and you can get all of that content. But today specifically what we're looking at are the differences between the 2019 and 2020 Suzuki RM-Z 450. Now Michael, what are some of the big striking differences?
The Suzuki, it's very obvious because this actually isn't a 20 I used for the Shootout. We used a 2019. Once again, because of the pricing of it was right, I wanted to get them like a consumer does from your guys' dealership floor. So we actually used the 19. The only change for the 20 is a small graphics change, and the triple clamp is silver. So in my case, thinking like a consumer, seeing that Suzuki has really, really strong incentives on these bikes, I'm like, well, we'll take a 19. Let's do it. Even though this bike did finish last in Shootout, and it has last year's, it's still a really good bargain. There's good points to it, and that's why I'm still seeing a fair amount of them out the track, and people are interested in them because, you know, for some guys that are really price conscious, the price is right for this machine.
There you go. So the 2020 and 2019 models are identical other than graphics and the color of the triple clamp. Now let's go back 1 year now, 2017 to 18. Was there a big change there?
Yeah, so let's say 18, 19, 20 on this bike is very identical, but 17 to 18 was a big change for them, especially where they had been on their old platform for so long. They went back to the drawing board. We have an entirely new chassis here with a really different architecture and look, completely different swing arm, airbox, subframe, all the bodywork was different. Suspension was a bit different. They went to a different shock layout and a different style shock to what we call BFRC, a balanced free rear cushion, which we'll get to in a minute. They went back to spring forward. The biggest thing that really didn't change, it was maybe the most disappointing people, is the motor only got a few small updates, and it is still kickstart bike. Being a kickstart bike, it is still actually the heaviest in the class by about a pound, mostly because the engine's never updated. That's where a lot of the OEMs have lost their way over the years, is taking their original cases and slowly shrinking down their 450s and cutting the weight. Suzuki still has the same basic architecture for this motor from 08 on, and that's really where the physical weight is coming up in this bike is really there in that engine. So the positives to a BFR design is all the oil getting pushed in and out of this much larger adjuster is your rebound to compression flow feels very free on this shock. It has very good action on like acceleration chop when the shock is constantly changing between compression and rebound stroke. It has a nice free motion, so it does well in those situations. Where it kind of struggles is overall range of damping character. It doesn't work really well on super high speed hits because, once again, it's based off road race technology. Road race bikes don't face the shaft speeds that a dirt bike does. The shock on a street bike might move at 5 meters a second at best. The ones on dirt bikes are moving like 12 meters per second. The suspension on a motocross bike, even though you don't think it's going, the bike is physically going that fast, the suspension on our bikes go through faster travel speeds than what's on a Formula 1 car by like 3 times because of the forces we're applying to it. So that shock struggles with those really high-speed damping areas and a little bit with low-speed damping control. Now, the shock has been out for 3 years. They haven't made changes to it, but aftermarket-wise, I've seen companies like Racetech and a few others have done their own valve kits, and they've done a really good job of expanding the damping characteristic of the shock. And I think that's one of the biggest, definitely one of the biggest upgrades for this bike is a straight-up revalve out of the box. So you can save a lot of money on this bike off the floor because there is really good incentives on it, but then I would definitely put that money towards suspension. They went back to a spring fork, which definitely helps it. It just needs to be better balanced because of the shock setup. And then the other kind of thing that a few people have been dealing with is the new chassis is extremely precise. Suzuki tried to make a bike that outturns their old 450, and that's what they're known for. Everybody goes, man, a Suzuki turns great. Well, they did it. This thing probably turns in even quicker and has more turn-in response, but it's partially because the chassis is more rigid. It lacks a bit of chassis comfort, so even as you start to set up the suspension, you just feel that the overall frame just doesn't move as much, so you definitely feel more of that energy up as a rider. Personally, I actually have a small business where we do engine brackets, and we do them for a lot of the race teams, and it's one of the biggest bikes it affects is this one, and a lot of teams are trying to do that, modify their stock mounts by either drilling them out or going to an aftermarket set. They play with the torque settings on the chassis itself to try to free up how the chassis moves, because the Suzuki just feels kind of pent up a little bit. It feels like pent up energy, just doesn't feel like it's conforming to the track as much. Even though the engine itself, as we said, it's still basic architecture, it's still a really fun motor down low. Low to mid, it's got great response. When you do throttle, like dyno pulls of quarter to half throttle. It's really competitive with bikes that have been continually updated. Where it struggles is high RPM. It doesn't pull very well up there. And it also has an old school 4-stroke feel. Everybody used to know, like, older, like 450s from 10 years ago, when you revved them, you felt a lot of engine inertia, a lot of braking, and all that inertia is part of why guys say 450s are so hard to ride, because they physically don't weigh that much more than 250F, but man, when you get in trouble, it's all that inertia dragging you different ways that you kind of have a hard time fighting. A lot of the newer 450s have like reduced their crank mass. It just made the bikes feel so much lighter in engine character. The Suzuki still kind of has that high RPM, so it's definitely a bike that suits more of a low to mid, kind of a guy that likes to short shift it, because down at that character, it's very rideable. Up at high RPMs, it's not making a lot of power compared to the rest of the field, and that engine's gonna fight you a lot more and just make your riding experience a bit harder. It's, like I said, there is definitely a place for this bike. Like I said, guys that really struggle with their turn-in on their corners, that really just struggle getting into ruts, the Suzuki's great there. Like I said, it's not a powerhouse king, so it doesn't get away from you. It's still really good low to mid if you ride it in that area. And the price, it really comes down to, hey, yeah, the KTM and Husqvarnas, they're super light. They also command a very high MSRP, and it's hard to get a deal on one. You know, a lot of people want to come in a dealer and try to get a price. There's just not a lot of margin on that bike. It really has to stick closer to price. The Suzuki is the lowest MSRP to start with. There's great incentives. You can walk out the door with one of these, save $2,000-$3,000. Man, if you're just a guy going out on the track on the weekends and trying to have fun, and you don't need every latest gadget, but you just want a fresh bike that, you know, it is a fresh bike, less maintenance than the bike with 200 hours on it, Suzuki's a great buy for that kind of guy. Or the guy that already knows they're going to do a suspension or pipe, you're going to put that money, roll it right over into those parts without spending anything else.
There you go, guys. Those are the striking differences between the 2019 and 2020 Suzuki RM-Z 450. If you like this video today, please give it a thumbs up. If you want more action like this coming directly to your inbox, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be part of the notification squad. I'm Carl Bratch, I'm Chaparral Motorsports. This is Michael Lindsay. Until next time, take care and ride safe out there.